Okie dokie. Well, I mean, it's Thursday, which means another video, and I mean, I'm here. I hope after the last video you are too. Um, and with that comes this, and that is that really from here on out, until I guess I say otherwise, I suppose a preemptive trigger warning should be said. The talk of self-harm is going to continue, not in an exploitive way, but in a way of explaining just what I was going through at the time. Again, I feel like to reiterate this, this is my story and my fight and all of that, and it's mine, and I own it, and it's not anybody else's cross to bear or problem or whatever. It's just mine. So, but with that comes the other part of this project is I wanted to tell people what I liked and cared about and share some funny adventures, but also to be me and to be honest of what I could. So that's part of this, and those adventures will continue. Some of this is rough, but some of this is I still smile at it. So let's get started as we cruise to the end of 2001 and into 2002. I got just one life in a world that keeps on pushing me around. November 22nd, 2001, 11:29 p.m. My journal reads, "Can I make it? I mean, can I? In any form, survive life? Not just Matt, like old Matt or new Matt, but me. In any form. I don't know. Best friends abandon you. Do I fight something or not? Do I fight for me or other people? Either? Neither? I mean, I've been left to fight what I can't stop. Maybe I shouldn't be here. But I am." As days continued, I did what I could to not draw too much attention to my newly found stress relief, all the while finding a weird joy in that it felt like it had been working. I was going through my days without conveying too much negative emotion or so, I believed, while still being me. The outgoing, joke-cutting, self-deprecating nerd. If, however, my cuts were visible, I felt easy that I could deflect it. "Matt, what happened to your eyebrow?" Kate asked me one day in Downbeat. "I got caught by a tree branch on the way in when I left the house this morning. I thought I ducked low enough, but it caught me." I brushed it off. "Cut on a finger? That's a band-aid and an easy explanation. I was painting a model and had to cut it off the sprue, and the blade slipped a little. Most of the time, I cut high enough on my arm to cover it with a t-shirt. Legs were covered by shorts or pants. Chest was easy, shirts. As it got cooler and I added longer sleeves, shirts and jackets to the wardrobe, it was even easier to cover, while giving me more area to cut when I did it. We were gearing up for regional choir auditions, Christmas concert, the madrigal dinner and choir. Choir had its moments, though the fun it gave me and the love I had for it felt like a far-off lighthouse in a storm. Yeah, it was still there. During one class period, Wendy had all the guys line up in a V formation, one tenor and one bass singing their part. On one hand, it felt like a test to see, that she liked to do, to see who was really practicing. And on the other hand, it was just to see how the different voices blended together. And David D. happened to be singing tenor for the part, and I was singing bass, and after we sang together, there was a short silence in the room. "Aww, became a collection of female voices, and he and I looked around the room. Wendy smiled, standing up for the piano. Okay, we need to make sure that they sing together a lot. There was nodding from the ladies in choir, and David and I grinned at each other, exchanging a respectful nod. But choir wasn't always positive at times. Wendy's would sometimes have a day where seemingly nothing the choir did was what she wanted. We'd be working on a section, she'd just decide she wanted to work on a different song, or she'd yell at the altos for being late, or guys for not knowing a part, or she just wanted to take an optional second soprano or baritone note. After a day of constant barrages and yelling, the choir morale had taken a hit, to the point where even the most easygoing were tired of it. As the bell rang, there was a beeline for the door. I, on the other hand, didn't move, and Wendy noticed. I was already in a fighting mood, and she seemed like she was too. She sat at the piano and glared at me. You have something to say, Mr. President? She asked, putting a bit of that inflection on that last part. You bet I do. What the hell was that? I asked. You mean a choir that couldn't stay focused today? She responded. That's a hell of a way to look at it. You had tenors and basses working their parts. You gave no direction to a baritone note, so I took it over with Brian and David. The altos were working on their stuff with you, and the sopranos were in the hallway working on pieces with Kate. And the minute everyone is together, you snap at the choir for no clear reason. We're gearing up for a concert and people are being lazy, she said. The door opened, and Meg stepped in, coming in for Shantae. Wendy and I turned to the door, saw her, and she stopped, turning around, and she put her hand up. Hold on, ladies. 1 second, she said, closing the door behind her. No one in this choir was lazy today. You just decided to pick on us, I continued. You don't get to sit there and question my judgment or how I direct this choir, Wendy scolded. I will, if I think you're yelling at us for no reason, I fired back. You don't have that right. I am the teacher and you are the student, she said, and with what I believe she thought was some finality. I shook my head. Then act like it. There was a bit of silence. I knew what I said. I knew how I said it. And she stood up from the bench of the piano. I don't know what happened today. I don't know what you brought in here with you, but nothing in this room required your treatment of this choir today, I said. And if I remember correctly, making sure you don't snap at the choir is the exact reason why you made me co-president. Well, your position as president within this choir may be something that needs to be addressed going forward, she responded. You have a class to get to, and I have a choir to prepare for, and you're not getting a pass from me to your next class. And if I hear that you snapped at any other choir today, then I guess we'll pick up this conversation later, I responded, and I walked out the door. I went through the rest of the day as best as could be expected, but it seemed to have made the rounds that Wendy and I had gotten into a fight. I wouldn't talk about it, just that I had something to say, and she may not have liked it. When I got home, though, I realized that maybe things had gone a bit further than I thought, as both my parents were waiting for me in the living room. Hey, kid, my dad said, and I walked in. Put your backpack down and have a seat. My dad knew it sounded ominous, so he cut it with a smile. My mom sat on the couch, so I sat down next to her. I'm guessing this is about choir, huh? Wendy called and left a voicemail, so we called her back, Dad said. She said the two of you got into an argument and you were disrespectful. Not exactly how I'd put it, I replied. Did you ask her what the hell her problem was? He asked. I asked her what the hell was that when she started screaming at the choir, but I did it after class when it was just her and I said. No one else was around. I didn't call her names. I told her that what we were doing and it was asked of us, and that her yelling at us didn't make sense. She said we were being lazy. I disagreed. She's the teacher, my mom responded. Agreed, and I told her that maybe she should act like it. Saying this, I could see my dad wanting to put his face in his hands, but he didn't. Kid, I'm not wrong, I said. She put me in co-president, specifically saying she wanted me to tell her when I thought she was being like this. We got into an argument like this last year. I know, my dad said, but she called today with the intent of letting us know she was removing you as co-president and from the choir council, and that she was thinking of removing you from Downbeat. I laughed. Yeah, that sounds about right. But we asked her why she made you co-president, and she said the same thing you did. That she knew sometimes she would be harsh and you wouldn't back down from her, my dad said. And now she's pissed that I did that, I finished. She was pissed, my mom added. Which is what we asked her. We said, Wendy, are you mad because he did what you told him to do, or did he do something else? Because if he was doing what you asked him to do, that you empowered him to do, we can't punish him for that. But if he did something more, we will address it with him. She took a few minutes, but I think she understood it. And, I asked, you did what you were asked. We won't punish you for that, my mom responded. I let out a bit of a breath and a chuckle. Thanks. All right, you're all set. Thanks, Dad added. As I grabbed my backpack, I could hear him singing under his breath, Tom Petty song. I will stand my ground, and I won't back down. No, I won't back down. That's your theme song, kid. We exchanged a smile, and I headed upstairs. My nightly cutting didn't change, but I knew, at least for the moment, maybe I had a little bit of backup. The next morning I showed up for Downbeat, the same as usual, sitting in the hallway before everyone else got there. As I sat there for a few minutes, the door opened, and Wendy walked in. As she headed towards me, I saw a flash of metal in the air, and I caught her keys that she had thrown. Good morning, Mr. President, she called out to me. I unlocked the choir room door and tossed the keys back to her, and she caught them and grinned at me. So, you ready for round 2? Ready whenever you are, boss. I grinned back. You really called my mom and dad? We laughed and walked into the choir room together. She walked along on the jagged ridge. She told me she was thinking of me. One of the bright spots of this time period was that I had a chance to build on a few friendships that I had started in the past year. One of which was with Tara, out in West Virginia. While Evan and I would chat on Instant Messenger from time to time, it was Tara who I actually had a continual series of conversations with. We would touch base almost daily, going over how her life was in West Virginia as a homeschooled teenager, and then how things were going in Arizona. We would exchange letters and pictures over time. Our friendship sort of just naturally progressing past meeting each other for a few days. As we shared stories and life experiences, we approached the topic of Meg and my breakup, which she and the others had learned either through IM or letters with Meg. Tara said it had surprised everyone out there. She asked how I was doing, and I kept things as surface level as I could. This wasn't out of distrust. It was just still working out how everything had happened with Meg had become a more difficult topic for me to navigate without getting stuck in my own head. Tara was understanding, which in my mindset at that time was a great relief for being in the thick of it daily and feeling like within our friend group that had been so intertwined. When you came out here, I have to admit, when I saw you, I thought to myself, no wonder Meg talks about him so much, she told me over chat. I had to remember you were Meg's. In a world where I felt rejected, it gave me a little boost. It would be a lie to say I didn't have a crush on Tara in return, but with the distance between us, residual feelings for Meg, there was never really much acting on it, just the fact it was there. We enjoyed our few times chatting together, though, and would continue to send each other letters and messages for a few years. More locally, Matt, P, Jen, and Ani were becoming a trio of people I was seeing more often. Matt and Ani would join Putman and Xandar and I from time to time to play more time, making our game groups more larger, violent affairs. We would also play Magic or video games, and sometimes they would join at a group get-togethers or parties at Crystal's. Matt and Jen would date through the year, and Jen and I hit it off quite well, quickly becoming friends. So it never was like this one's a tag-along thing in our hangouts. If the guys were wargaming, Jen would work on homework or crack jokes or work on a scrapbooking project. Ani had always been into the more army-based war games, so making the transition to the smaller scale of Mordheim that we played was easy for him, and he had a close friendship with Zan. My parents watched as my friend group grew, and they would have the unenviable task of keeping 4 to 6 teenagers fed while dice threw across the table. Matt and I would do a series of hangouts ourselves where we would rent 4 or 5 horror movies, watch them over the course of a day, then take them back. It was through these hangouts that we threw around the idea of our own cheesy horror movie, purposefully planned to be a movie you would see on some 2 a.m. public access channel, like a horror show like Svengoolie or Elvira. We titled it Hotel of the Damned, about a mutant who stalked a hotel in some mashup of horror tropes and trying to think of funny but gross kills to up the body count. In a folder, I have a list of ideas we worked on, which creative writing, such a fun class of mine. I did work on writing out an outline for the movie, though nothing past that ever came to fruition. One memorable Friday night saw Matt, Ani, and I take off on a cross-Phoenix metro area road trip. We had no plan of where we were going, no destination in mind. We just drove along the streets until we got bored, and then we just turned down another street. Thing was, we started driving out so far east and north that after a while we realized we weren't exactly sure where we had ended up. And, well, we had to pee. We pulled into a Fry's, and as we got out of Matt's van, a couple dogs popped out of a truck beside us barking, and Ani was quick to point out maybe finding another place to stop, as dogs in beds of trucks weren't something we wanted to try and outrun. So we continued driving around, and we ended up at the Chicago-inspired hot dog place in East Mesa, who generously offered us their restroom, and the 3 of us bought hot dogs and sodas in return. We realized we were all getting close to curfew, so we got directions to the freeway and headed home as fast as possible. We had crossed quite a bit of the valley that night, and in a fun twist of fate, I would end up working out near that same hot dog place years later when me and the family moved to Mesa. And every time I passed by it, I remember the 3 of us Matts, driving around, not caring we were lost, listening to Matt's techno music, and then bursting through the door, asking for a restroom and food. With friendships growing, I noticed that Putman and Zan could see something might be up, but I tried to keep it as close to the vest as possible. I'm working through feelings I have with everything going on. I'm okay, though. It's under control, was what I would tell them if they asked. How believable that might have been, I don't know. And the idea of keeping things from them at the time didn't make me feel any better, which gets into a vicious cycle of self-blame. But I also wanted to be as open as I could be at the time. What I was going to do was going to keep happening as long as it worked. But sitting around with my brothers and friends playing war games, that was always a welcome distraction for as long as they stayed. And I loved them for it. I bet you're singing proud. I bet you'll pull a crowd. In the fall, Crystal had another one of her parties, one that really played to the fact we were a batch of singing friends, as when we arrived, there was a karaoke machine and TV set up in her front room for us to take part in. Within a few minutes of everyone arriving and getting settled, we all got drinks and something to eat before settling in, and the group had most certainly grown. Meg and Cody, Blaine, Zan, Heather from Creative Writing, Kate, and a few more of us all settled into the front room, and the group of us brothers all sat together, egging each other on with music choices. The ever-present fun ribbing between me and Kate, though, continued as she began to have a song play, and she grabbed a microphone. Matt I feel like this song is for you." She then proceeded to start singing "You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling" by the Righteous Brothers, and as she did, I shook my head. I didn't take any offense, but laughed at both the song choice and myself because, well, there was some truth to it. "I think I'm being Top Gunned," I said, turning to Blaine, who laughed. When she was done, Crystal took Blaine around, and I even belted out a favorite of mine, albeit in falsetto with no fucks to give, Kim Carnes' Betty Davis Eyes. We continued laughing and singing throughout the night, some of us taking more comedic songs or performances, but when we were also earnestly and honestly singing songs supporting each other all the way. Sure, being in choir can sway your perspective, but damn, I was amongst a talented group of people. "Actually, in all seriousness," Blaine started, which instantaneously drew laughter. "No, I mean it. I want to hear Matt sing a song." "Listen, the last time you said that, you played Short People Got No Reason to Live," I responded. "Yes, and that was funny," he replied. "But no, this is serious. I have a real request for you to sing a song." Blaine handed me the microphone, and I took it with a little bit of hesitancy. "I mean it," he said with an honest smile. I nodded, and he queued up a song. As the opening guitar to "Sweet Home Alabama" by Leonard Skinner played, the group applauded. "Oh, yeah, this totally," Kate called out, joined in agreement by Putman. I caught a smile from Cody and Meg as well, and by this point I was committed. "Not a bit bad pick, brother," I said to Blaine, and I started singing. When the song was over, Blaine gave me a brotherly handshake, and I handed the microphone to Crystal, who planned to take the next song, and I stepped out into the room and into the kitchen, getting something to eat and running into Heather. It was here where Heather and I started talking for most of the night. We went for a walk, we talked about school and problems and crushes and all sorts of things. I gave her my overshirt to wear because she was getting cold, and as the night started to come to an end, we went back inside, having a chance to talk away from an entire group of people and wandering ears from creative writing. At the end of the night, as everybody wished themselves a good evening and good night, I grabbed a ride back with Blaine. An actually uncommon occurrence with how our schedules were. But on this night, we took the long way home. We went out to that long stretch of Pecos Road, the old road that we use as a road trip, that old singing and stomping and talking grounds, blaring Linkin Park or whatever CD he had songs on the radio. "Are you okay?" he asked as we drove down that darkened road. "I'm surviving," I responded, "and right now that's all the answer I can give." "You just call if you need to talk, bro," he said. "Or if you don't want to talk, we'll just drive. Whatever it is." I nodded. And we spent the next hour looping around the roads. Two brothers navigating the dark together. Life is rough, but it's sure exciting. The Madrigal Dinner returned for a second year in the early part of December 2001, and this year we did a little bit more when it came to skits and choreography. The singing was still there, a bit of cringe high school students attempting medieval dinner theater, and the hope it came off as a good fundraiser. This year, however, we added a few more pieces that, for the guys, definitely felt like improvements and a bit of leeway to be absolutely foolish and comedic, and another which allowed for a bit of violence. However, before Madrigal dinner kicked off, we were all in our backstage area where we could relax and get ourselves ready, and nerves were also high for some of the newer members of Downbeat. So the rest of us were trying to explain, listen, this is going to be fun. It's about fun. It's about trying to stay in character and singing. And Zan, well, he had settled well into the swing of things, being a bit of a drama department guy from time to time, and he was always up for a good show. As we started to get ourselves settled, though, I found Jackie pacing an area. We had had a few conversations before, and there seemed to be a bit of a connection there, but as I adjusted pieces of my costume, I caught her attention. Hey, nerves? I asked as we stood outside a hallway of the kitchen and the dining room. She nodded. Yeah. I get it. It was like that for all of us last year, but hey, Emily's here and Kate's here, I'm here, Zan's here. We're all in this together. If it gets too much, take a break and come back here. Jackie nodded, still nervous. I mean, I kiss you to give you something else you could think about. It just came out. I was surprised myself. I said it. Jackie laughed and I grinned. Hey, getting you to laugh works too. Let's have some fun. With that, I stepped out of the room trying to shake off what the fuck I just said while we got the dinner underway. The guys had fun being funny. And at one point we did a human pyramid that saw myself, Steven, and Zan on the bottom row holding up the other guys above us before they all came crashing down on top of us. Which, let's be clear, it was planned. As we all scattered, though, we moved through to our next skit, which had two members of the choir in disagreement, and in such the disagreement broke out into a fencing contest. As Zan and I took the fencing foils, we looked across at each other. We used the stage and the area to our advantage. We delivered quips to each other as we fought. And everything was going according to plan until at one point our signals got crossed. Where I thought I wasn't supposed to duck, Zan thought I was, and I caught the point of a fencing foil across the forehead. We stopped for a moment, locking eyes at the mistake. "Ha-ha! You came close, but alas, no blood and only a tuft of hair misplaced," was my attempt at improving a line. "Or a sign that there's nothing there to harm," Zan responded. We exchanged grins and finished our sword fight, coming to a draw, Zan getting in a last-minute joke about my height as we saluted with our foils and walked backstage. As soon as we got back there, we instantly checked my head for a cut, but there was still nothing. "You were supposed to duck," Zan said. "Yeah, I know," I returned. "Luckily, I'm short enough you almost missed me completely." "And I didn't lunge like I was supposed to," Zan replied. "Oh, yeah, that could have been bad," I responded. "Are you two okay?" Kate asked, walking up. She had been president of the Mountain Point Fencing Club and gotten us our foils and worked our choreography with us. "Yep, fine," I responded. "We all froze when it happened," she said. "It's fine, it's all handled. Did it look good?" we asked. "Yeah, it was great, really," she responded. We went back to the dinner and completed the rest of the evening, and at the end, when we were all done singing, we got to mingle with family and the guests who came out. Wendy asked me and Zan how we were, what happened, and a simple "forgot to duck" was easily accepted, adrenaline being what it is. When all was said and done, the event was successful from both the entertainment and fundraising aspect, though I was happy to be done with it. With the Madrigal dinner out of the way, we turned our attention to the Christmas concert, Christmas choir party, and putting together cards and presents for friends. Leaving lunch one day, our group had been discussing plans for a bit of the break we would be getting, and we got into a discussion of what people wanted for Christmas, and little lists were made. We were joined by Meg and Cody that day, and I was still fighting with what Meg had requested of me, so I tried to ignore any and all small talk sent my way. As the bell rang for the end of lunch, and we began heading off for creative writing, all of a sudden I was now the target for questioning. "Wait, what about Matt?" Kate asked. "Matt, what do you want for Christmas?" I shrugged. "I don't know. Nothing I can think of." As Kate and Emily probed, I just continued to shrug, continuing to walk forward. "I know what Matt wouldn't mind for Christmas," Meg said, and this got me to stop and turn. She gave a small smile. "How about Tara here with a big blue bow?" I laughed, and my own laugh caught me off guard. Meg caught my eye and smiled, and I nodded. Okay, that's not a bad idea. Run, run, Rudolph. Santa's gotta make it to town. Leading into the Christmas concert while working on solos and songs, one of the songs that Downbeat would tackle was going to be a version of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Emily had a solo, Steven had a solo for him to clown around, but Wendy wanted someone to intro the song, you know, the portion naming all the other reindeer in a more crooner style, and asked for auditions. Can anyone do something like Barry Manilow? She asked. I raised my hand. I can give it a shot. So I did. And when I was done, Wendy smiled. It's yours, Matt. The night of the concert, Downbeat was in the mood to have some fun. We sang a funny song called Throw the Yule Log On, Uncle John. But the pacing and the words make it sound like you're actually chucking logs at a family member. Other choirs worked through their sets, and when we took the stage for our jazz set, Rudolph was the first song up. I was asking for something like Barry Manilow, Wendy told Putman later, as he related to me. Matt came out and just gave us Barry Manilow. Okay, that was purposeful. I wanted to be fun and crooning, and when I hear it on the recording, it sounds exactly how I wanted it. But the rest for me was, it led right into Emily singing as well. The song just melts together well, and we have a blast of a time with the rest of our jazz work. I'll Be Home for Christmas, and You'll Be Swinging. And of course, a cappella closed off the concert, bringing up the alumni for Carol of the Bells. A quick intermission was used to set up for orchestra, as we got ready to do selections from Handel's Messiah. And if there was ever a need to say how great music could be, or another choir-induced holy shit moment, this was going to be it. Firstly, the fun of being with our orchestra friends to be part of the holiday concert, listening to them play is always a treat. As the concert built to the finale, the Hallelujah Chorus, and the orchestra began to play, the audience rose to their feet, a traditional response to the singing of the song. A cappella and orchestra all went full speed ahead into the song. Wendy directing the choir, Werner directing the orchestra, and in the mind of this choir nerd, it felt like such a cool team-up. Sure, the departments had toured together. Yes, friendships and relationships had crisscrossed, but here we were on stage performing all together. The recording is just power and energy and music, and it sounds amazing. As the song progressed, we were all starting to look at each other, as well as Wendy and Werner, because we could feel the electricity. And I remember Zan and I standing next to each other, belting out bass notes. When the song is over, the crowd explodes into cheers, and I can remember being on stage and looking around, and the smiles on all of the faces are burned into my memory. And the choir applauded, the orchestra, and they us, and we all cheered for each other. Because holy shit, we were good. There was a choir Christmas party shortly after, which allowed for more choir bonding, and little gifts from Secret Santas were exchanged, and the choir council oversaw the event with Wendy. Gave me a chance to continue to see and meet other members of the choir, get to know a few of Sarah's friends and Shantae, and spend time with Zan and Putman. And I could tell there was a concerted effort from them to try and keep me out later when we did hang out. They knew something was going on, but they didn't know the what. The week after the choir Christmas party was the last week of school, before the break. And in school, Christmas cards were exchanged. A few of them I found in a folder later. My favorite being from Mandy. She thanked me for the fun time in creative writing, even if the girls all had crazy conversations that I was always good to have around. As the day came to an end, there were a few changes coming as well. The American government class came to an end, and Meg and I would not have any more classes together. Economics would start the next semester. We didn't share that, and I found this a little bittersweet. The hope was I would have been able to try and navigate or try to approach Meg about our friendship, but also not mentally ready or emotionally ready to have that conversation. Zan and Putman coordinated with me schedules for gaming. As the last week came to an end, everyone, teachers included, were ready for the break. It was here, though, on the last day, that Jackie walked up to me and asked me to talk. Yeah? I asked as we stepped out into the hallway outside of the choir room, and I caught Emily and Kate looking at us as we did so. Everything okay? Good. I just need to talk to you, Jackie said, brushing her black hair out of her face. Yeah, sure, I said as I leaned up against the wall in the hallway, which hadn't filled with students quite yet. Do you remember at Madrigal dinner what you said to me about how if I wanted you to kiss me to make me not nervous? She asked. I blushed, and it was my turn to run my hand through my hair. Yeah. So, I kind of wish you had. For a second, I froze. Oh yeah? She nodded. I grinned. Do you want to hang out a bit after school? She asked. Yeah, let's do that, I said. And as we headed into winter break, Jackie and I decided to give dating a try. There's no place I'd rather be than asking if you'd oblige stepping into Christmas with me. It was late into the evening on Christmas Eve, 2001, and I'd been up listening to music and writing. I was never going to bed any time before 11 p.m. at this time, and I heard Sarah's door open. I figured she was up to get some water or go to the bathroom, but instead, I heard a tapping on my door. I put down my pencil. I threw a shirt on over my tank top and buttoned it up, more to cover my fresh cuts than anything else. And I opened the door. And Sarah was on the other side in a white tank top and a pair of pajama pants. What's up, Mouse? I whispered. I can't sleep, she said. Too excited? I asked. Because even into her high school years, Christmas still had a lot of childlike wonder and excitement for Sarah. She'd make sure to get all the decorations out by the day after Thanksgiving and put the tree up, so she nodded. Yep, she said, and then paused. I cocked my head a bit. Am I bothering you? She asked. Did I wake you? I stifled a laugh and shook my head. No. You want to watch TV? She asked, nodding to her room. And I followed her in. She had the TV on, the local NBC station, which was getting ready to show Midnight Mass with the Pope, and we sat down to watch it. We're not Catholic, but it was still part of the Christmas season that Sarah took part in. She climbed on her daybed, and I sat on the floor, illuminated by the TV, and I closed the door so the noise wouldn't carry down the hall to our parents' bedroom. While the Pope did his sermon, we talked. She talked about a guy she liked. She had folders of her own writings, and she continued to push on me to give her favorite bands like Hanson and Garbage a try. I was surprised to find a CD amongst her collection of some of my music having been burned, including REO Speedwagon, Journey, and Styx. When did you get into my music? I asked, a grin forming. You know, real music. Real funny, butthead, she said. You don't have bad music. You just have old music. Uh-huh, I responded. But it's rubbing off on you. We talked about choir. We talked about mom and dad. We traded stories of Christmas past, of making special potions, in the sink of assorted soaps and shampoos and mouthwash when we were younger. We talked about choir and going on tours. She talked about boys and crushes. We talked about her friends. We talked about mine. No topic was off limits. As it got close to 3 a.m, we were still talking. It had been our longest time talking in recent memory, and we talked about that too. Did you ever get too cool for me? She asked. Will you? Never, I told her. Besides, you're more popular than I am. You're the cool one. That is true, she responded. Though Ashley may like me more, I teased. Shut up, she said, and then countered. Blaine, though, he was hot. Okay, now you can shut the fuck up, I said, laughing quietly. There was a pause. Are you okay? She asked. I sighed. I'm getting through it. Another pause followed. A longer one. Are you okay? She repeated. Not exactly, I relented. But I'm working through it. Promise? she asked. I nodded. Or die trying. She changed the channel. Early morning infomercials gave way to local news, and as it got to almost 7 a.m. and the Today Show, we realized we'd stayed up all night, hanging out in her room. Sarah wasn't tired. Her childlike excitement and adrenaline had taken over. I'll go wake up Mom and Dad, she said as she leapt over me and into the hallway. I could hear her joyfully waking them up, then bounding down the steps. I followed behind, my parents a few minutes later. We settled downstairs, my parents getting their coffee, and Sarah was already taking down stockings and sorting presents. She handed me an A&W root beer out of the fridge with a smile. As we settled in, Sarah handed our mom her camera, and she sat on the floor. Too cool for a picture with your little sister? She asked. Never, I responded. We each gave a bit of a smile, and the flash went off. We're dealing in the limits, and we don't know who with. When Jackie R. and I began dating, we went into it with the best of intentions and the beginnings of a crush on equal sides. We shared downbeat and acapella together, had quite a few shared friends, and Emily and Zan and Kate and Heather and others. We would hang out, go to parks for walks, spend time after school, dating high school teenager stuff, that kind of thing. She was a junior, I was a senior. We met it with hopeful expectations. Jackie, as a singer, was amazingly talented. She was a talented artist and an honest person. She was creative and a hell of a writer. We joked about my apparent attempt at breaking the ice at Madrigal dinner. We shared friends and stories of how we met them. As the new year started and choir resumed, there was a flash of being that cute choir couple, and for a short time we did have that. But you remember in the prologue, when I wrote I wasn't always my best self? This would be a fucking great example. I was not in the right mental or emotional frame of mind for a relationship, and any good relationship Jackie and I had, or could have ended up having, suffered from it. While we did have fun at times, we were both struggling with certain aspects of life going on. I was depressed, cutting, and feeling like I was drowning, and at times I felt like I was dragging her down while trying to find her as a reason to keep floating. She had her own struggles going on, and me compounding and adding on to it wasn't what she needed or deserved, and so after just a little bit over a month of dating, we broke up. It also felt like a lot of this soured things going forward. Now, whether that was true or only in my way of seeing things, it definitely felt that way, and my relationships with Kate and Emily seemed like the biggest example. It also created this weird situation in Downbeat or amongst other friends. I tried to reach out and repair things with Jackie most of all, but it felt like the damage was done. Emily and Kate, though, they seemed more open to it, and in the end those friendships didn't explode or implode. However, I'd already felt like lines had been drawn after the breakup with Meg, and this just further carved those lines into the ground. I was spiraling, and I was starting to take relationships I had with people with me. My cutting increased and became not only a way to release stress, but a way of self-punishment. When I couldn't be the version of me I wanted to be, but became angry or petty or felt like I'd fucked up, I'd do my best to bury it, come home, and then cut it out. I have an absolute shit ton of regret about how Jackie and my relationship went. And really, the dating part is the least of it. It was the possible growth of a friendship between us and in the overall larger group that suffered the most. We just weren't the right people for each other. But more than anything, I wasn't the right person for her. And for that, I am the most sorry. Awake again, I can't pretend. And I know I'm alone. And close to the end. As I continued to find myself struggling, I found myself listening to different kinds of music. While REO in the 80s were still prevalent, I was also firmly in a spot that if I did not have to be around people and compel myself to try and go through the motions of the day, I was okay with and welcomed being sad, melancholy, broken-hearted, and alone. And whether his music was ever intended to be that way, the perfect songs I'd begun to find, whether just in the title or in the lyrics, was Jackson Browne. His song, The Loadout, or Stay, was the perfect song when I thought about, or still do think about, Tech Crew. But there were other songs that I could feel I could pour into my brain that I just allowed me to feel what I needed to. Music was still trying to communicate with me. I had a little bit of hope in that, even if I didn't necessarily feel positive while doing it. I just needed to continue to feel something, and it was a cycle. Song, cut. Song, cut. Right. I was grasping at anything, and Browne's music was allowing for a bit of a soundtrack. I would listen to songs like Tender as the Night, Running on Empty, the Pretender, and Lawyers in Love album while painting. Tender as the Night was a song that took me back to sophomore year and Katie, and I tried to tap into memories of Blaine and Diana and that downbeat. However, that also made me think of Tour or Love Shack. Even Loadout would make me think of Blaine and David gone. I felt like I was fighting a battle, trying to hold on to music and having my window concerts, so I would shut off the lights, grab the remote as a microphone, and sing out to that lamppost. But gone was the 80s rocker or power ballad singer. I sat in my chair, staring blankly out the window, singing Late for the Sky. You never knew what I loved in you. I don't know what you loved in me, I would sing, but unsure to who. You could have put any friend's name into who that song could be dedicated to. And as I sat with my feet up on the windowsill, looking out into the dark night, I waited to see a familiar car park or a face walking up to that apartment. Instead, it was just my reflection, and he was bleeding. I had replaced my own singing with headphones, listening to song after song late into the evening so as not to wake anyone. As the end of the CD came, I hit the eject button and switched out another. At this point, I was just reflexively grabbing music. It didn't matter at this point, but instead, I heard something out from the hallway. As I got to my door and opened it, I could hear Sarah in the hallway bathroom, groaning and throwing up. I ran across the hall, and she was sitting on the bathroom floor in a pair of pajamas and her shirt was dirty from her being sick. I grabbed a washcloth and wet it and started to wipe her face. Matt? She asked, half asleep, half exhausted. Yeah, it's okay, I said. I'm going to try and get you a new shirt. I grabbed one of my button-ups from my room and threw it around her. She clumsily took her shirt off underneath it as I buttoned her up. I threw up on my bed, she said. Okay, I'll get it. Stay here. I went into her room and stripped her bed, grabbing whatever dirty blanket or pillow there was and threw them over the staircase and downstairs. I'm going to go get you some water, I said. She nodded, and I headed down the stairs, grabbing the blankets and pillows, throwing them into the laundry area before grabbing water and a bowl that I put a plastic bag in. I got to the top of the stairs just as Sarah got sick again, and I helped her hold her hair back as she threw up. I wet another washcloth, and after helping her wipe up her face, gave her water. Sip it. Give it a minute. I grabbed the blankets off of my bed and took them into her room, throwing them on her bed, followed by a pillow. I made her bed with my blankets, and when I was done, I put the bowl on her side table and walked back into the bathroom. I'm so tired, Matt, I can't get up, she groaned. I slipped her arms over my neck and deadlifted her off the floor, cradling her and carrying her out of the bathroom and into her room. I laid her down on her side and put the second washcloth on her forehead. Matt, you're bleeding, she said, looking at my arm. Don't worry about it, Mouse, I told her. I'll go check the bathroom and I'll be right back, okay? She nodded, and I sighed. I cleaned up the bathroom and threw the dirty washcloth into the laundry, coming back upstairs to find Sarah close to falling asleep. I grabbed the notebook off of my desk and a pen, and walked back into her room, sitting up against her bed. As Sarah fell asleep, that's where I stayed, until she woke up the next morning. So she wouldn't be alone. Say there ain't no sense in pretending. Your eyes give you away. One of my bright spots of my school days was my biology class. Our teacher, Mr. Quick, was cool, but the fact I was sharing the class with Putman and Wes and Corey, that made that class amazing. Anytime we could do a group project, it was the four of us. If we could only do it in duos, we'd split up between the four of us and stand at the same table. Corey never seemed to get sucked into any of the drama going around. She was just being her bubbly self and smiling, and it was a welcome sight in my third-hour class. We were definitely a handful, though. Us guys, we would talk sports or wrestling or horror movies, and Corey would interject where she could, or pull us into another conversation, though the ketchup bottle from Sorority House Massacre 2 would be a point she'd bring up in our horror movie talks, and I told her if I ever made a zombie movie based on my stories, I'd want her involved. Wes was an absolutely cool dude, even though going into class, the only thing I'd really known about him was that he dated Emily on and off for like a couple of years. We'd laughed that even though we didn't really know each other, we had a picture together as part of that big group from that junior year of mine at homecoming, and to my knowledge, they remained friendly after breaking up. He also was involved in getting jokes on Putman, who fired back with gusto, but Putman saved his kidney punches for me. The four of us were a great team in that class. And when we did a group field trip at the Phoenix Zoo, we all stuck together. Corey even decided to stay with us, her guys, over joining Meg and Emily and others who invited her along. Our little ragtag group ran through the zoo and sat together on the bus, sharing our own inside jokes and laughs, and we would draw laughs from Mr. Quick any chance we got. We were fun, but not obnoxious, and never looked to be disrespectful, and any chance that I got to hang out with Corey was absolutely welcome, because she was always a burst of energy. Which is why, one day, it caught not only me, but Putman and the rest of our group of friends off guard when after school we found Corey in the performing arts lobby and just sad. Aaron tried to talk to her, along with Meg and others, but she just kept not being receptive. The guys, we were trying to keep our distance to allow for space for them to be able to talk, and we were making polite conversation with Cody while also planning a gaming day. As Aaron and Meg stepped away from Corey, they walked up to us, and Meg was troubled. "She won't talk to anyone," Meg said. "Is it a guy thing?" Putman asked. "She didn't mention anything in class earlier, and she seemed okay." Aaron shrugged, and Meg turned to me. "Matt, would you try?" Meg asked. "Please?" I nodded and I put my bag down, and I walked over to Corey, who was up against the wall, and stood there, shaking her head as I walked up. "I don't want to talk about it," she said. "Okay," I told her, "and I'll leave you alone. But Meg asked me to come over because we're worried." She didn't say anything, but instead just stood there with her arms crossed her chest. As she did, though, she was holding back tears and refused to make eye contact. "Corey," I said, "it's okay to cry." Corey instantly burst into tears and launched off the wall, giving me a hug. I hugged her back. "We broke up," she said, and I nodded. "I'm sorry," I responded. "And now I'm getting your shirt all wet," she sputtered. Another cry, but a little laugh came with it. I laughed a little bit too and squeezed a bit tighter. We stood there for a few minutes before she let go and wiped her eyes. She let out another little laugh, and I offered her the corner of my shirt sleeve to wipe her eyes, and I smiled back. "Thank you," she said. "I hope they don't think I was being weird." "Nah, but hey, if you need anything, give me a call, okay? I'll be online tonight too, and I'll see you tomorrow." She nodded. We exchanged knowing glances, and she grabbed her backpack. She waved to everyone. "I'm okay. I'll see you tomorrow." I watched Corey leave and turned to see Zan and Putman walking up. And Meg caught my eye behind them. She looked at me and smiled. "Thank you," she mouthed. "Always," I mouthed back. And with that, we are done with this section. I did this on purpose because this next part that I am about to record for the next video, is equally one of my most favorite creative things that I have ever done, and also it's my last trip to NAU. In fact, there's a couple sort of lasts that happen in that next section. But this is where I am in my life at this moment. It's not great. There are some wonderful memories in there too. That Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer recording is one of my favorites to listen to. The memory that I have with my sister on that Christmas is absolutely fantastic, and that picture of us that is in it is just one of my favorites ever. And the just everything that is starting to build all has a reason, whether I liked it or not. But that's more stories for another time. Until then, I have to figure out what shirt I'm going to wear for the next video. And you, well, you be good to yourself. And, of course, keep on rolling.